Hi everyone, it's Laura and you're here for Mobility from the Grounds Up. Today, maybe you've guessed already based on how I'm positioned here, we are working on squats. So for a lot of people, this low squat position looks like and feels like for your body a non-starter, but we're gonna do some gentle groundwork today to help you feel more comfortable and confident um, and have some tools to help you get into this lower squat. I don't expect everyone to want to be in this position, but being able to be here and stay here for a little while is a great indicator of our mobility, and it allows us to interact with the world in a way that can be really positive. So first off, I'm going to have you grab a couple of things here. I have the spin bike here. They're not spinning today in Mobility from the Ground Up, but I have it here because I need something stable that I can hold on to. So if you're at home, that might be a door frame that you can grab that little edge on either side around the door frame. It might be a countertop. If you have some straps hanging from the ceiling in a home gym, you could like a TRX or a suspension system. Use that as well. Just something stable that you can use your arms to help you up from the low squat. Because that's the first thing that we're going to look at here is we're going to look at, do we have the mobility for a full squat and versus the strength to be in the low squat. So on the other thing we have here is I have a rolled up yoga mat. We'll do a little groundwork that'll be great for under your head. It'll also take some pressure off some areas as we work on this mobility. And I have two yoga blocks. At home, what you could grab that we would use those for, if you have yoga blocks, you can use those, or like a low stool or a seat or something a little bit lower than the average chair you would normally sit on, or even like firm pillows. So pause here if you're watching later, go grab those things. And in lieu of this rolled up yoga mat, you can do a rolled up beach towel. All right, so when you're ready, join me here with your stable object, be it that countertop, door frame, or if you have a spin bike, you know, something that's not going to move. We're going to test and see if we have the mobility to get into a low squat. So you're going to hold on, use your upper body for help, and then you're going to lower down. Our goal is not pain. It's just to see, can we get into this position? And you might be more rounded or forward, or if a lot of people feel like if they weren't holding on, they would fall backwards. And that's okay. So now let's come on up. Use the strength in your arms to help you up and shake out a little bit. It can be really intense to be in these extreme joint positions. So we don't want to, I don't necessarily want you hanging out there for too long. So I'm going to have you go again. If you were like, I didn't even go down last time, that's okay. We have a couple things that we're going to try here. If it felt good with your feet on the ground and using this prop, you're able to get back up, you can stay right there. Otherwise, you can use yoga blocks, your pillows, whatever it may be, and position them so when you come down, it kind of stops you from going as far as you potentially could go. So it becomes a little seat that's a little bit lower. So your seat could be higher than this, depending on how you're feeling today, and then you can come back up. So that's one variation that you can do. If this feels good, you can stay there. So we're trying to figure out, okay, do we have the mobility, the range of motion? Separate that out from strength here. Good, that was 3, so we don't want to go crazy here. I'm going to put those aside. Another way, let's say you don't have a stack of yoga blocks or pillows or anything that's working for you there. Another way that you can take some pressure off the squat is to put your heels up on your rolled up towel or yoga mat. You could something just to get a little bit of elevation of the heel. And come on down. And notice how that heel lift, for most people, this can make it quite a bit easier having that heel lift. This is why ladies or gentlemen, if you wear heels when you're dancing and you're getting low down when you're dancing, it's a lot easier in heels, high heels than it is. You might be able to do a really low squat in a high heel that you wouldn't be able to do with bare feet. And back up. Use your arms as much as you need to, but also as little as you need to really work those legs. All right, so we've seen the low squat with the feet flat on the floor. Also, I hope you've experienced it. We've done it with a kind of a bolster behind our glutes to limit the range of motion down. And we've also done it with a heel raise. So remember which felt the best for you and what felt like can ease you into this low squat experience. All right. Now we're going to work on 3 major things here. A lot of really pretty extreme joint ranges here that need to come into play in this. So we need flexibility at the ankle with the knee in front of the ankle. We need really great knee flexion. A lot of times this knee flexion creates discomfort. And we also need really great hip flexion here as well. And there's some rotation in the hip too that happens. So we'll work on all 3 of these and we'll see which one makes the biggest difference for you. All right, the first one we're going to work on is the ankle. So we're going to come into, to start off here, a low lunge position. This bothers your knee. Put that folded up towel or yoga mat, maybe a yoga block under there. Elevating that back knee can really take some of the pressure off here. But we're going to actually move forward, our knee in front of our ankle here. Now we're only doing this on one side right now. So you should be able to get it pretty far forward relative to what you could do with 2. And then from the front view, to make sure we don't have extreme stress on the knee. There is a little stress going knee in front of the ankle, but make sure that knee tracks kind of your second and third toe in that same direction. So it's not coming in really in an extreme way or going out in an extreme way. Have the knee track the toes so there's not any torque on your knee. And let's do this 2 more times on this side. Again, what we're working on here is ankle dorsiflexion. So a lot of times we talk about point flex of the ankle. This is the flex. It's dorsiflexion. Good. That was our second of the last 2. So let's go to the other side. And again, on this, I don't think I stressed this on the setup on the first side, but I did say put something under your knee if that feels better. But start out with that hip above the ankle and the knee above the ankle. So knee above the ankle on the front leg, hip above the ankle on the back leg. And then the hip's going to move forward from that back knee. I think I said ankle, but I meant on the back leg. That's something else. Okay. All right, so we're knees tracking the same direction as the second and middle toes. And then we come back and go forward. I have decent range of motion in most places. So if you're feeling like, okay, Laura is getting her knee in front of her toes and her heel is still on the ground, why can't they do that? I've been working on this for a while, so it just takes time and patience with yourself. And you don't need to force anything. Remember that throughout this little mini session. 2 more here. You can also with this, if you're going through and watching this, again, I want to go through each side again. You can also use that stable object to help with the balance, to where you can be next to a wall to help with the balance. I want the balance to be the limiting factor here as we work on our mobility. All right, we're going to come back up however you can, And I want you to pick the version of the low squat that you're going to stick with throughout the rest of our time when I say we're going to look at this low squat again. So did that ankle range of motion help us a little bit? So you can either choose the blocks under your butt or the yoga mat under your heels, or you can go feet flat on the floor. And we're going to hold on to our sturdy object, especially if you know you'll fall backwards otherwise. And we're going to go on down. If the knees feel really, really not great in this position, you can take your rolled up towel or yoga mat or pillow and kind of stick it behind your knees. As you go down, that limits the knee flexion. That takes some of the tension off that could be there. You just have to be able to grab it again. So we're going down. How does this low squat feel? Now that we worked a little bit on our ankle mobility. One more time here. Use this if you need it. If you don't need it, put it to the side. Nice. All right. How are you feeling? We're going to work on the knee flexion now. We're going to come into a knee hand position. And this move simultaneously works the knee hand position, or it works the knees and the hips. So we're working both here. And then we're unloading. We're going to do 2 exercises here that are going to take the ankles out of it. So you're going to rock the hips back. You've been watching mobility from the ground up. You know I love a good rock here. But we notice here that we have that deep hip flexion, deep knee flexion. If the knee flexion is too much, put the rolled up towel or yoga mat underneath. Excellent. Go again. Now we're going to do 3 more of these. And what I really want you to pay attention to is this is, especially if you feel like you're going to fall back in the low squat. Like if you let go of whatever you're holding on to, you know you would be on your butt. So what I wanted you to pay attention to is your spine here. So I want you to engage your core. Notice when I engaged my core, I didn't round my back. All right. So we're going to engage the core without rounding the low back, and then back the hips up, and start noticing if and when your low back starts to round. That rounding moves our center of mass back and causes us to feel like, okay, most people's low squats, when they start working on them like this, if they can get there, because they round here, it moves their center of mass back, and then they have to lean forward in order to be in a comfortable position. So if we can get less rounding here, we can get a little bit more comfortable in that low squat. So let's do that a couple times here. If you have a yoga block, or even a pillow works really well. Yoga blocks are a little light, unless you have a fourth yoga block. And I want you to point. If you didn't notice before, I pointed my toes because I wanted you to take the ankles out of it and just work on the knees and hips. But that yoga block, I digress, the yoga block, as we go back, if we round, we'll kind of feel it. It's a really light one like this. It doesn't change that much, but you could use a cork yoga block or a box of noodles or something. Put on the low back, because if you start tipping, the yoga block won't do it, but a box of noodles certainly will, or whatever type of box that you have, it'll slide off. Whereas if you can keep the tailbone on top, or from tucking under, it'll kind of stay on the shelf that is your sacrum, at the base of the spine. Good. Now I'm going to have you tuck your toes. Let's engage the core without rounding here, tucking the toes, and then work our hips back, getting knee flexion and hip flexion here. neck, but with a lot of ankle dorsiflexion here. Our knees are currently level with our toes, and we know that because they're both on the floor. So if you felt like your ankles, when we did the ankle mobility one, weren't feeling great, bring back a bolster. This time now you're gonna put it under your knees so that you can tuck your toes, and that'll give you a little less ankle dorsiflexion. So we're playing with the shape of our squat here. Unloaded or lightly loaded, trying to keep you're almost like trying to lift the tailbone up toward the ceiling as we reach back the hips. How's it feeling? Let's do 2 more. And if your wrists are tired, you can come down to your elbows. And this actually is a more closely resembles your squat, because in the squat, your chest and your thigh are going to be a lot closer to each other, more like they are on the elbows. So give this a try. Even if your wrists don't bother you, give it a try, because we get more hip flexion here now. Nice. One more on this. And if the knees are bothering you, you can still put that another rolled up towel, rolled up yoga mat behind the knees to limit the knee flexion. Good. So this is we're working on the mobility portion, the range of motion, with a lot less load. So we're not having to use those to lift our body weight, essentially, which is what's happening in an all-out squat. Lifting our body weight through a really big range of motion. All right, so we've done this big range of motion that really closely resembles a squat. So I'm going to now have you come back to your stable object that you can pull on to help you get out of this full range of motion squat, or bottom out squat, whatever you like to call it. And you're going to lower down and come back up. Go at your pace here. Use the bolster under your butt if that helps, so you don't go through as big of range of motion. Use the bolster between the knees if that helps, under the heels. I've given you a few options. Just a lot of times it's figuring out what works best for you, and then remembering that so that you bring it to your squat work. Nice. Let's do one more. You might notice as we're doing these big range of motion squats, even if you're using your arms quite a bit, the legs get a little bit tired and the heart rate goes up. Moving up and down like this. We're going nice and slow here too. Really challenge our cardiovascular system. If at any time you feel like a little bit dizzy as you're doing this, then I want you to stop. It might, for some people, I know we're just keeping our head, we're staying pretty upright with our torso, but that up and down can really, if you're not used to it, can really impact your blood pressure and make you a little bit dizzy. So if you're feeling dizzy at any time, I want you to take a break. All right, we're gonna lay down now. If you have vertigo, positional vertigo, this one you'll probably not want to do. But I like to put something under my head, and you can still work on this without being flat on the ground. So if you have cushions that you can bolster yourself up with, that can be really useful. You can also do it as long as you feel comfortable with the balance. You could try this standing as well, and I'll show it to you standing as an option. But we'll start here on the floor. I've got a little bolster under my head to help support my neck. It doesn't have to be in an uncomfortable position. And what we're going to do here is we're going to draw the knee in. I've got my hands under my knee. If your knees don't bother you, Then you can go over the knee. But we're really trying to get that big hip flexion here. And we're kind of, this is a passive hip flexion because the arms are doing the work. Let's do one more time on that side. I'm on my right leg. Nice. Let's go to the second side. It might feel easier or harder on this side relative to the one we just did. Good, let's come out of it. Again, the nice one about this is if we keep that opposite leg to the floor, we actually get a front of the hip stretch. We get some extension of the hip, which is a nice counterbalance to all this hip flexion that we're doing. Let's do one more time on the second side. Draw the knee in, again, under the knee if your knees are sensitive to that deep flexion. Nice. All right. What we're going to do now is we're going to, last time when we drew the knee in, it was a really passive, okay, I got my leg to here, but now I'm using my arms to draw that. Now what I'm going to have you do is you're going to engage your core and your hip flexor, and you're going to use your core and your hip flexor to draw the leg in. And then you're going to push back out. Your core and your hip flexor are active. Our core and our hip flexor actually pull us in that low spot. So if we aren't engaged here, it's really hard to stabilize the spine, especially through the abdominals. Let's do one more. You can set the leg down if you want. If this bothers your low back, then you can put your hands under your pelvis. A lot of times that'll take away that low back pressure. But that might just mean that we have some tension in the hips that's pulling the pelvis around. And when the pelvis moves, the low back is back. Good. So we're actively pulling in and out here. So I'll show you that active pull in and out. So, and it's almost like you're pushing out, then pull it back in. Use your core, use your hip flexor. Should be pretty active here. They're holding up the leg. And you can do that one more time laying down. If you're going to join me on the floor because of any vertigo issues, then standing, you pull up and press back down, pull up, press back down, and then you can hold behind the knee in that passive range of motion too. Let it kind of relax back down. So this is more passive, and then you have the active version. You can do it standing. You could also do it from a reclined seated position, or stacks, like I said, stacks some pillows so that head stays up and you're not looking up at the ceiling. All right. Hopefully you did that last rep if you were on the floor. We're going to do a little butterfly stretch here and work on a little bit of hip rotation. This is hip external rotation. When we're getting into a low squat, there needs to be hip rotation in order to get in that position. It's not as big as this, the hips going out, but it happens. So I have my feet together and I'm able to sit on the floor here and keep a pretty neutral spine. If you feel like you're really rounded and kind of in an uncomfortable position, then use that rolled up towel. A lot of times just lifting the hips up, it allows the spine to be in a little bit better position. And on the roll, it allows the pelvis to tilt into a more neutral position instead of being tucked under and sitting on your tailbone. You could also do it on your stool or on a yoga block. Whatever cushions you may have. And I'm going to, right now I have my feet together, you saw. And now I'm going to have you, we're going to keep our heels together, but take the toes apart, because this is what happens in we've got that ankle dorsiflexion in a squat. So we're not just going to stretch our hips in a pointed angle position, we're also going to flex that. How does it feel different for you? Nice. All right, let's come out of that. Let's go back to that full range of motion squat. If you've been bolstering under the heels, if you've been bolstering under your bottom, then you can continue doing that, but find your stable object here. And come on down into your low squat. Put something between the knees if you need to. If you're feeling pretty confident at this point, you don't necessarily have to hold on, but if you feel that urge to fall backwards, you're going to want to keep holding on. If you're on a door frame, your hands walk up and down sides, and then press back up and lower back down. You can hang out down here. Sometimes just getting used to, you've got the top of the squat, which is standing at the bottom of the squat is as low as you can go. So hanging out in that low as you can go and kind of moving side to side here. Just so my knees aren't in the same position the whole time. Hips move a little bit. And come back up. Use the arms if you need to. We'll do one more. Nice. You can hang out if you like. If you want to come up out of it, you can. Oh, we are going to do one more because I want this time you to activate your hip flexors and your core and think about pulling yourself down into the bottom of the squat and see how it feels to really have turned on core and hip flexors that pull you into the squat. And you're really stabilized at the bottom and then come back up. How does that feel different? One more if you're up for it. You can pass up on it if you want to. But engage the core. Pulling yourself into the squat with your core and your hip flexors. And come on back up. All right. We've got a couple minutes left here. I did that intentionally because this is a lot of really deep hip flexion, a lot of deep knee flexion. So I want to stretch out a little bit and the ankle flexion too. So we'll start standing and we're going to do, if you're in shoes right now, pause because this is not possible in most shoes, maybe some slippers or very flexible shoes. But this is the top of the foot stretch. I encourage you to hold on so it's not about balance. You can also do this seated with one foot off the side of the chair. But we worked a lot on ankle dorsiflexion, and this is a stretch in the ankle plantar flexion, that opposing position. Stretching out the muscles that kind of got a lot of use here in the front. Let's switch sides. Nice. If you want to add in, so you can, a lot of times what I see on this stretch of the front of the ankle is that the foot will go out to the side or kind of come in. And most people I see, you might not be most people, but most people I see will have this kind of rolled out ankle to the little toes. Can you get the ankle more in alignment here like this? So a little bit more pressure. Ooh, I got a cramp there when I did that because that's what I do. So I gave myself a little. This can sometimes cause cramps like it is in me currently. So we just come out of it and go back in a little bit more. I'll put more weight in my front foot so there's less pressure in the back. Nice. And then let's come down into that lunge again. And this time, what we're going to do, put something on your knee if you need to first off. And then you're going to just tuck your tailbone under. So the tucking of the tailbone is going to open up the front of the hip. We worked a lot with those hip flexors today. So this is a nice stretch. Just tucking the tailbone for most people will give the stretch that we want. If you're not getting it, then you can move slightly forward, but don't lose your tailbone tuck. So it's not this one that we did earlier. It's a tuck, got a stretch, great, and then keep the tuck, push the whole pelvis forward. To get a little hip extension, since we did so much hip flexion, switch sides, and tuck the tailbone. Hold on to something if you need to on this too. Again, this is about the stretch here, not the balance. Tuck that tailbone and head on forward. Nice. Again, don't push the whole pelvis forward unless the tuck doesn't get you your stretch. Keep the tuck if you do need more stretch, and take the pelvis forward. Nice. All right, last one here, a little bit for the low back. So we're gonna do a legs out in front. So I'm bolstering my hips here. You could sit on the floor, but I want you to try and get as neutral of the spine as possible. So this could actually be on the edge of a chair, like a much more elevated position, so that we have that nice neutral spine. And we're gonna stretch out the back of the knees a little bit. So I'm hinging from my hips here. So my pelvic, if you imagine your pelvis as a bowl, I'm tipping that bowl forward. Filling out the front of that. And if you pull your toes towards your shins, get a nice stretch on the back of the knee. So we get a little bit of knee extension stretch here. And then you can keep your head above your heart here, especially if you have high blood pressure. You can round the spine a little bit and get a low back stretch too. It's the low back. For some people on squatting can really speak to them. All right, well, you made it through mobility from the grounds up, working on that low, full range of motion squat. Whatever your range of motion is today, a little bit every day can go a long way in being able to access this total body move. And it's a move that really I strongly believe in. If you can do this move, it increases your confidence and it improves your quality of life. So stick with it, keep practicing. A little bit goes a long way. Patient. Bye, everyone.